first things first, you're going to want to obtain MS-DOS games.
Let's get to the real meat and potatoes of the Alright, now that that's done. As far as the theory of colors, I wanted to mention that I don't necessarily think that calling blue the truth and red lies is 100% definitive, as he had said at one point regarding the torture sequences. I think the red also points to manipulation and control and dread. The tape players all having it with exception to the cassette deck for the MSX2 at the end. And the intro level having a ton of red in the form of the man on fire, whom I'll refer to as Fire Vulcan for brevity's sake from now on. Sure, he's a hallucination, but that's definitely dread, not just a hallucination. On top of this, I believe that blue also represents lies in certain contexts because Ground Zeroes I do not believe happened exactly how it seemed. Like I had said, Paz was fairly badly burned after the explosion when she was defeated piloting Metal Gear Zeke. I really highly doubt that 1, she survived, 2, that she would have had no scars, and 3, that she survived that fall. That was... God, anyone especially head first with no preparation would have died from that because it would have been like hitting concrete. Now that that's done with, I'd like to reflect a bit on a couple of points by Python and Selkin. If you haven't watched it already, you should watch this video in the card, talking about Kazuhira and Skullface, and that they may have been working together from the start, which would explain the hallucination Venom has near the end of the game, where he turns around. Miller is suddenly Skullface, and then back to Miller. Miller still carries Skullface intentions, and not only was the act of killing him a lie, but it was empty in the simulation as killing him really accomplished nothing. On top of this, there's also the fact that the iDroid not only doesn't appear to create holograms in the standard sense, more like a plane in a simulation floating above an object. The voice is also audible when you first wake up in the intro saying V has come too, before you even have your iDroid. Python and Selkin also pointed out that this was Donna Burke, the singer who did the song Heavens Divide for Peace Walker and Sins of the Father for MGS-V, was also the voice of the iDroid. On the MGS-V Ultimate Analysis, they mentioned that she revealed in the comments of another one of their videos that she did stations too, meaning that she also read off the Japanese train stations. Similar to Miller being used as the main soldier voice you hear throughout MGS3, potentially being a meta-narrative of the simulation taking over your consciousness in the form of Miller. Didn't you think that it was weird that these Russian soldiers had American accents even though MGS-V, and even MGS2 for that matter, made sure to have proper Russian accents or just speaking Russian when dealing with Russian soldiers? The Diamond Dogs logo being at OKB0 was no coincidence. The Diamond Dogs are working in conjunction with XOF as Absolutely Nuclear had pointed it to, under Miller's orders no less. Perhaps Miller and Skullface are two of the people in charge of the simulation. Or perhaps it's just Skullface, and Miller is a projection of Skullface, particularly when he's the gravelly Miller, who is much darker than Miller ever got in Peace Walker. Or Ground Zeroes for that matter. That's not all. Kaz has basically been proven alongside Big Boss to be involved with the torture at Camp Omega. He said something that cut right through me. Nothing to be ashamed of. Pain gets the better of us all. And give her the shot already. It seems to me that Big Boss is blocking out a lot of memories of how he turns into the villain of the series, or more accurately, as Absolutely Nuclear points out, it seems more like Cypher is blocking the truth from being revealed. A couple of comparisons I'd like to make with Silent Hill from MGS-V is that Vulcan is similar to Pyramid Head, and that he appears to be Venom's manifestation of his own demon. Just like Pyramid Head represents the hate and malice in James Sunderland's heart, Vulcan is a reminder of the many men he's killed on the battlefield, and the hole in his heart that will never be filled from his men being taken from him by XOF. The other comparison I'd like to make is that when you get to a fight with the skulls and the mist is taken over, the radios are suddenly affected and start to play clips from PT, such as the radio broadcasts about the father killing his family, the Swedish warning of aliens, and the music that accompanies this broadcast.
As the congressional debate over gun control flares up yet again, we regret to report the murder of a wife and her 2 children by their husband and father. The father purchased the rifle used in the crime at his local gun store 2 days earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home on a Sunday afternoon. The day of the crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved the rifle, and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her it was just a game. Over gun control flares up yet again. We regret to report the murder of a wife and her 2 children by their husband and father. The father purchased the rifle used in the crime at his local gun store 2 days earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home on a Sunday afternoon. Don't touch that dial now, we're just getting started. Retrieved the rifle and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen. You can't trust the tap water. When his son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him.
Kan du vara din egen chans? Låt oss välja. Min röst som förtäljer framtiden eller dina klådade. Nå, då välj. Du kan välja. Ditt liv. Din framtid. Tror jag, så kanske det redan upptäckt. Ja, radiodramat från 75 år sedan var sanning. De är här på ord. Och de övervakar och ser allt. Lita ej nu. Lita ej på huset. De är redan kontrollerade av dem. Så har det varit i 75 år nu. Endast vår mästare kan få dem. Du har en rätt. En rätt att bli en av oss. Så välkommen till vår värld. Mycket snart öppnas portarna till en ny dimension. 2048 63 2048 63.
Dad was such a drag. Every day he'd eat the same kind of food, dress the same, sit in front of the same kind of game. Yeah, he was just that kind of guy. But then one day he goes and kills us all. He couldn't even be original about the way he did it. I'm not complaining. I was dying of boredom anyway. But guess what? I will be coming back and bringing my new toys with me. Dad was such a drag. Every day he'd eat the same kind of food, dress the same, sit in front of the same kind of games. Yeah, he was just that kind of guy. But then one day he goes and kills us all. He couldn't even be original about the way he did it. I'm not complaining. I was dying of boredom anyway. But guess what? I will be coming back, and I'm bringing my new toys with me.
This tells me that Kojima was definitely transplanting elements of Silent Hill into Metal Gear, which is why Death Stranding's fog has to look so amazing. One more thing I wanted to go over before moving on to Survive, since not many theorists seem to want to touch it, is that to me and Cypher, it seems that the reason that Kojima is hidden from us regarding Quiet being clad in underwear and fishnets isn't just because she subsides on photosynthesis, but also that she is a projection of the simulation. She could be created by the creator as a love interest for Venom, a sort of woman in the red dress from The Matrix.
So I understand that you've run through the agent training program. You know, I wrote that program.
Here it comes.
So what did you think of her?
Of who?
The woman in the red dress. I designed her. She, well, she doesn't talk very much, but if you'd like to meet her, I can arrange a much more personalized meal.
But what seems equally possible to me is that she's a projection of Big Boss's subconscious, desiring women in skimpy clothing. This could be because he's obsessed with Eva, trying to essentially get her back, but that's definitely speculation. I'm not going to say that that's fact whatsoever. The final piece of the V trilogy, Metal Gear Survive. The bastard child Konami shat out to the world after Kojima supposedly had been disgraced by them. With the idea of it all being a ruse, Metal Gear Survive becomes a lot more interesting. There are many hints at not only VR, but this potentially being the second to last piece of Project Ogre. Remember the Japanese folktale I mentioned earlier? Guess what colors Virgil AT9 uses for the two personalities within it? Blue and red, which merges into pink after killing the Lord of Dust, alluding that blue and red were the same all along. Or that everything is a lie. This brings me back to Ground Zeroes, which I wanted to discuss. I don't think that Ground Zeroes was the events as they were. I think it's probably closer to Python and Selkin's analysis, stating that it seems to be Gray Fox's memories re-experiencing the Camp Omega incident with altered contexts, i.e. the helicopter crash that never happened, and likely finding a living pause which clearly never happened after the end of Peace Walker with how burned she was from the explosion, as mentioned. There was no way that she lived through that. Back to Survive. Virgil AT9 is a reference to James Cameron's The Abyss, a movie about a team of deep-sea divers with advanced ocean diving equipment being tasked by the United States government to aid in the removal of nuclear warheads from a downed submarine. This was made in 1989, and the main character's name is Virgil. Now, why is that interesting? Well, the Abyss intro shows a descent down an abyss, and that happens to go down the Y, as it is designed stylistically to be menacing. I feel that Kojima using a V, besides from intending to mean virtual reality, also resembles the split in reality that Big Boss goes through, as Absolute Nuclear alludes to. There's many allusions to not only religion, but also dreaming within Metal Gear Survive. This has been discussed somewhat by Python and Selkin, but I don't feel that they went deep enough. Dite itself is the name to Hell, given in Dante's The Divine Comedy. Karenkor is also taken from the same, and is the ferryman who carries departed souls to the afterlife. These names were given by Goodluck, who turns out to be Chris, the handicapped kid from Survive. What's interesting about this is that he was expecting to go back to the year 1980, but ended up in 1943, at the height of World War II. This is the beginning of the end right here. Remember that cyclical time war I mentioned in the side op, where technology from the future goes back in time and gets reverse engineered by those in that time, creating factions from separate times, warring across time and space, tearing the universe apart? If you don't, now might be a good time to at least watch up to the end of part 1 of that video. After that, I focus on a write-up by a guy named Joe Drinks Beer, which I still think is possible, and part 3, which was focusing on the burger meetup. In hindsight, I agree with a comment that I got, which is that parts 2 and 3 probably should have been their own video, but I was basically intending for it to be the Ruse News, but I just didn't want to call it that. Anyway, that's exactly what happens in Survive. Chris goes into the wormhole, ends up in the 40s, reverse engineers the iDroid given to him by the captain, and is able to advance tech at an alarming rate. Another thing I wanted to discuss that Python and Selkin mentioned is that the iris energy needed to open the wormhole, a wormhole that's blue, seems to be a metaphor for opening our eyes, just as the Phantom Pain debut trailer beckoned us to do. Wake up. Open your eyes already. Think about it. With all I've said, wouldn't it make sense that Survive is the bridge to Death Stranding from Metal Gear? It's no longer Metal Gear Solid, it's Survive, which alludes to horror and has horror themes. Check this out. This is a famous or infamous, depending on who you ask, clipboard from Survive that was so newsworthy due to a not so subtle jab at the director and a last hurrah for former Koji Pro staff. There's an interesting detail though that not many have talked about. It was noted 9 months ago on NBGO There's more detail in the texture file that isn't shown on the clipboard itself. Detail on the left-hand side near the bottom are two Japanese words. Kankaku means sense or sensory, interesting considering dooms and the brainwashing, and the other happens to be one of the 5 Japanese cities that merged into the seaport of Kita-Kyushu. Interesting considering Bridges theoretically is 5 United Cities of America, which I theorize are the following. LA because of the importance of Hollywood in American culture, New York City because of how massive and influential it's been around the globe, Seattle for its cultural impact being one of the most popular locations to record music in America, Houston because Houston we have a problem as well as it being massive in size, and DC because obviously the heart of the former government should be included for its significance. Along with all of that mentioned, there's also the obvious water in the sky, and the hidden weird alien fish things in the sky at certain areas. Hell, you can even see clear MSF logos all over Mother Base before it crashes, yet when you wake up in D-Day, you're greeted to a distorted version of the Diamond Dogs called Dead Dogs. Almost alluding as if there is yet to be another destruction of Mother Base, or the destruction of Outer Heaven with the data-mined red Diamond Dogs logo. Chapter 3 may come out, but I'm not holding my breath for that the way I am for the potential tie-in to Metal Gear and Silent Hill for Death.
An explosion. That will be our last.
So it's pretty clear to me in Cypher, as well as many of you all, that Death Stranding will likely be taking place in virtual reality due to various elements already mentioned in my prologue, part 2, and the side-op. It becomes even harder to deny when looking at the man in the golden mask summoning a chimera out of his mask, in a way that looks like either magic or some form of electricity manipulation, almost as if he's materializing creatures out of nanomachine particles that this virtualized reality is likely comprised of. What if I told you that Death Stranding's protagonist seems to be pulling an MGS2, and then we may not play as Norman Reedus, but either Léa Seydoux or Lindsay Wagner, more likely with Lindsay Wagner. It would be highly interesting to play, especially considering Dr. Strangelove's explanation of why she chose to use the boss's mind as a model for the mammal pod, which I believe to be the basis of Cypher's 5-layer AI control system that resulted in the S3 project.
We have a visitor. I'll introduce him. Don't try anything foolish. As long as we're in here, I can reduce you to carbon at the press of a button. Who are you? A man. A warfighter.
Boss. Is that you?
I call it the mammal pod.
Mammal pod?
For my participation on the project, I demanded access to all information on the boss. Everything the CIA had. Coldman sought an MAD-based AI that would deliver an effective retaliatory strike against the most appropriate target in response to a nuclear attack from a hypothetical adversary. An unmanned device to act as a deterrent capable of making the decisions and taking the actions that human beings cannot. I therefore concluded he required a cool calculating machine programmed to inflict swift, sure, and utter annihilation upon the enemy. No retaliation. But he took it upon himself to come up with a different answer. He said he needed the thought patterns of the very finest rational mind, one that thought on a global scale, took both past and future into consideration, and reached the best decision, no matter how painful.
And that's why you asked for everything they had on the boss.
It was the logical thing to do. I knew of only one person who could be entrusted with the fate of the entire human race.
What's your real goal here?
To clear her name. Why was a legendary hero forced to betray her country? Why was she targeted for assassination by you, her most beloved disciple? I have no use for fabrications. I want the truth. The boss's last will.
As well as this, Kojima did mention wanting to make a game about the boss in World War II, so having this distorted timeline would honestly fit even better and be much more fitting in the series, if I do say so myself. Plus, I don't really know how they would gamify the boss's disgrace constantly. What would she do in space? Fucking crash the shuttle? Fucking... I don't know. Speaking of the S3 project, remember the series of characters on the ACC wall that read out E523? It might mean Omega, as in from Zero to Omega, implying Zero's rise to godlike status by digitizing life itself, or it might be, aside from that, a subtle hint at the split in reality. If you put those characters into a hex converter and set the mode to EBCDIC, it reads out V with a space next to it, making it just a V and nothing. Zero. Aside from this, what else can I say that's VR about Death Stranding? Well, there's the instability of the simulation now including a mixed timeline, wormhole technology identical to that of MTSV, the plug that Sam seems to plug into prior to heading out in Trailer 4, looking identical almost to the plug of the Matrix, trying to avoid the chirals, the chandelier in the back pointing to further instability, the supposed supernatural elements such as coming back from the dead. All of this could be simply explained with it all being a virtual simulation gone horribly awry. As suggested by the Tomb Portable, who has so far made one video that has stood up from the rest, that being the ultimate PT analysis, it seems to me that Death Stranding, similar to PT, is going to be a strange mix of memories from characters throughout the Metal Gear series, particularly all the snakes, the boss, Ocelot, and a few others like Grey Fox. What I think is going to be most interesting is how these characters get explained. There's so many possibilities of what the man in the golden mask could be. Is he one man, or is he a man being possessed by a mask? Is he Ocelot, or is he Ocelot in the mask as a form of symbolism due to his self-induced hypnosis to believe that Liquid's arm would possess him at will? It would also be a reference to the mask, goofily enough. Silent Hill is essentially your personal hell, so is it so far-fetched that he would interpret himself as essentially a symbiotic being? So who is Sam? Everyone seems to think it's Big Boss, but considering that Kojima said that we will all be Norman Reedus, my thought is that Big Boss has been dead for a while now. The Patriot AI system has succeeded in full implementation of the S3 program, and now all life is controlled by being lived in virtual realities. People are put through tests to see if they are Ludens, or those who will rise above normal humans. It is possible that these Ludens are those who control this simulation, and it's likely that they were only selected during this bridge between worlds. Afterward, the rest seem to be trapped in purgatory to atone for their sins, similar to the postman noted in Python Selkin's Part 3 of their PT as Silent Hills analysis. Kojima is finally accomplishing his goal of making the character nothing more than a vessel for the player to experience things, effectively putting us into the game on a meta level. We aren't just Sam, but the demon possessing Sam. I think the black oil represents more than just black oil. I personally think it's some kind of programmable matter or oil-like micro-nanomachines. If Death Stranding is a simulation tying the past and present together as one, then the oil would be the blood of that simulation. There are several oddities that point to Death Stranding being a simulation other than what was mentioned. For instance, did you notice the red E on Sam's pack? Didn't think too much of it, did you? What about this?
The games are ready. Are you? Guess not.
Sony ran an ad campaign back in the earliest days of E3 called the You Are Not Red E campaign, which was a cryptic campaign leading up to the release of the original PlayStation, the 9th of September, explaining E-NOS. This same campaign is being referred to here in the form of this red E. Jeff Keighley tweeted out this tweet. Blown away by the scale and ambition of what Hideo is planning. He knows no limits. We has such a great talk last night. You are not red E. He tweeted this only a few days ahead of the 15th anniversary of the European release of MGS2, which was February 22nd. I'd say that speaks volumes to the intentions that Kojima is planning for Death Stranding. MGS2 is all about manipulating the audience, manipulating knowledge, and the power of what that looks like. It's just too bad that no one listened back then, and it took years of people analyzing the game to finally understand his true motives behind what he did for its release, and make that knowledge more mainstream. This ignores the rest of the package, which itself is highly curious. There's a series of numbers and letters, a giant spider, hinting that Kojima was the spider in control, as Tomb Portable alluded to, that appears similar to the FOBs in MGSV, and it's a circuit board. This is one of the two major keys that prove that Death Stranding is all in a computer. Aside from this, I'd also like to note, on the topic of computers particularly, there is a strong black and white theme for Death Stranding. Now think about this. Black is the absence of all color. White is the inclusion of all color. So, if that's the case, that would be a 1 and a 0, all or nothing. It's a binary switch, right? So wouldn't that itself be an allusion to computers? There's two strings of numbers. If you could take the second string underneath the black line and put it in a hex translator, you mostly get garbage, but in 3 forms of hexadecimal, which will be the main ones we're focusing on today, you end up with a V in the middle. In the DOS IBM mode, you find a V with 2 exclamation points after it. This find is thanks to a former mod of NBGO, Sexy Zombie Roo. He has proven invaluable in this effort to decipher the truth within the lies, as he's similar to me in that he's on the fence with the ruse. I'm most certainly seeing the vast possibilities, but I won't be too let down if this all basically ends up just being fanfiction, as I mentioned in the beginning. Kojima was certainly playing with fan expectations because that always was his motive: betray your audience. Besides, whatever Kojima makes, it will be good. The haters don't know Kojima because if they did, they would know it takes far more than a good team to make a good game. It takes good leadership too. Kojima and company have everything they need to make a stellar mindfuck of a story that will last the test of time for decades to come. It surely will get some hate, as some people straight up just don't get art, but I know that Kojima has something massive planned, and we've only seen the very tip of the iceberg. If you've seen the Tomb Portable's Ultimate PT analysis, you'll possibly remember the inclusion of a comparison between the picture from PT on the hutch and a picture of a much younger Leon Russum, an actor who appeared in the recent film A Quiet Place. In this film, the main characters must remain quiet to avoid being detected by the invisible creatures in the forest. This sounds very similar to the gameplay presented in the 4th Death Stranding trailer, showing Norman clutching his mouth to prevent his breathing from being audible, avoiding invisible creatures. What if I told you Kojima cast another character to look like another real person? Remember this guy? I'll give you a few seconds to guess who he looks like. I'll give you a hint. I spoke heavily about a novel this man wrote. Ding 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 ding, you probably guessed it since there's only a handful of novels, mostly 2. I've mentioned George Orwell, the genius behind 1984. If anything screams that Kojima is making a mirror image of 1984 with his vision, this man being cast is it. Another thing from Tomb Portable's PT analysis, the part where Lisa throws the window being explained as a PTSD occurrence from the boss as her space shuttle crashed due to one of the people in charge wanting them to add a window to make it more like the Soviet shuttle. This resulted in the crash due to it being aerodynamically unstable with the last minute addition of the window, a weakened shuttle, as well as the boss being more susceptible to cosmic rays from the sun, and the rest is just history. It doesn't seem like she threw the window at first though. It seems like it just fell from nowhere. Like the simulation just added a window. This, along with the gouge it out metaphor, and the whole section about the flower of life, are all highly important to understand some of the things I'll be referencing but more importantly, to understand the mystery that is PT. Alright, so this is going to be delving into what I think is going to happen when in Death Stranding, that leads into the creation of the Silent Hill we know and love, and how existing Silent Hill titles can be worked into being virtual reality nightmares. I mentioned in my side op that Death Stranding is going to be the new origin of Silent Hill, and that it's going to result from the termination of the world we once knew and loved as Metal Gear's universe. Kojima seems to be taking Metal Gear Solid 4's conclusion and writing with it, making the world essentially meaningless as everyone lives in virtual space. A good analogy would actually be the recent Ready Player One. These are only light spoilers. While this version is a lot more positive at the ending, the world is still obsessed with VR and often either neglects their lives or sink everything into competitions within this virtual space that equate to real money. This idea comes from the fact that Kojima retweeted this set of pictures that were painted by a Swedish artist by the name of Simon Stålenhag, inspired by a movie he saw as a child. These pictures evoke the paranoid life of living in a world where everything is virtual and everyone is connected non-stop. This seems to be the same concept Kojima is going to explore with Death Stranding, as these characters, or at least Norman Reedus, don't seem to have as many consequences for death. The main consequence in having to live with your actual mistakes, not dying, unless your death results in destruction of course, as seen with the Void Out in Trailer 3. As I discussed in Part 2.5, it seems that Death Stranding is going to be a virtualized interpretation of Dante's Inferno, including Paradise, Purgatory, and Inferno, with Inferno likely having up to, if not more than, 7 major layers. As we know, Silent Hill has a major focus on religion, or at least a cult based on Christianity if it were to go horribly awry, as religion sometimes does. So, while originally and still now it seems that Sam is going to be the protagonist, what if I told you that it actually seems as if Lindsay Wagner will end up being the protagonist? Kojima recently tweeted something that hints that, in fact, he might be pulling an MGS2 and hiding the real playable character from us the whole time. He tweeted this picture of a mask of Norman Reedus sitting next to a figure of the Bionic Woman. Lindsay Wagner played the Bionic Woman, which was Kojima's reason for wanting her on the project. With everything we've said so far, it may be that Kojima was wanting to use that as a connection to MGSV and having Venom Snake be a Bionic Man. It's also possible that all of the characters will be none other than downloaded consciousness in a virtual construct instead of actual people, and that was what he was alluding to. It becomes even stranger when you look at this recent song that came out on November 28th, only a day prior to the 17th anniversary of MGS2. Grimes, a pop artist whose lyrics normally sound like this, but with this recent single sounding like this. It doesn't seem to me that they were the ones who wrote those lyrics. In fact, it seems to me that Kojima, having recently spent time with her, that it's highly possible that he would have organized a cross-brand deal, as he has been doing with many people, having her make a VR-themed song about submitting to a computer overlord. I don't want to linger long on social media elements, but I do feel the need to mention this as it is coming up and might very well be where the truth is about to be revealed about Death Stranding's true identity and intent as a game. We've seen scant information, much of which has been pieced together from social media, but there's enough in Metal Gear lore to try and make connections. Anyway, Jeff Keighley, who I thought just hosted the Game Awards, actually owns the Game Awards, previously the VGAs, is known to be good friends with Hideo Kojima ever since he got blown away all those years back at E3 with the reveal of the original Metal Gear Solid on PlayStation 1, bringing Metal Gear to the West for the first time in a form directed by Kojima, since we didn't get the MSX2 release despite having a limited release of the system out here. Instead, we just ended up getting the shitty NES version, which was... This is of course until Metal Gear Solid 3's Subsistence release and the HD re-release. Anyway, the advertising for the Game Awards has been rather interesting in its focus not only on Kojima, but on themes that appear to be part of Death Stranding's virtual reality. Themes that appear to be part of Death Stranding. Virtual reality, explosions, a dark environment, horror-based stealth. It's really fascinating seeing how Kojima is pulling the strings from behind the scenes, knowing that he collaborated with Jeff for the reveal of the Phantom Pain Enigma of Joachim Mogren, just being Kojima. There's also a very interesting song called We Appreciate Power. This seems to be Cypher's Patriot AI to me. So who do I think will be who in the game? I don't think anything's definitive, especially with Kojima's track record of switching things around behind the scenes and only showing us certain things just to betray those expectations, i.e. right in an MGS2. We may very well end up playing as Lindsay Wagner, being portrayed in her younger form by another actress. It would explain the reason behind there being two versions of her, the blue dress and the red dress, the blue potentially being a mirror and a lie, while the red dress in the poster is the reality. That would even satisfy Kojima's desire to make a game where we play as the boss, as that's who she resembles the most. Who knows, the mask might be a red herring, and there might be two versions of Lindsay, as there were two personalities for Virgil AT9 in Survive. Dude, we just don't know. I'm pretty certain that the man in the golden mask is Ocelot, potentially possessing his host through the mask as Ocelot was possessed by Liquid. That's speculation for sure, but the idea of him being Ocelot seems fairly sound to me considering Kojima has cast the Japanese VAs for Snake and Ocelot as Sam and the man in the golden mask, which would explain my thought that Sam is a culmination of all the snakes we know with his gruff voice. I had said in the original release that I thought he was Drebin, but I was mixing up characters. Who I really think is Drebin is this unnamed character said to be part of Sam's support team, likely his commanding officer. What if I told you that Drebin was either one of the handlers or who was controlling the simulation, or an anomaly? I think that would explain it fairly well considering that Drebin is just part of the system. Del Toro is likely going to be Kaz, as he is said to have the second most lines in the game next to Sam, hinting at that being who Robin Atkin Downs is going to be playing, an identical mocap gear to the other cast of Death Stranding. Mads is clearly going to play as the Sorrow, as he has control over the dead in this strange land, and has control over the simulation as he did in MGS3. It seems to me in Cypher that these people aren't just normal people, but Ludens. Aliens that appear humanoid, but are actually superior to humans in every way, particularly intellectually. Kojima wanted us, the players of his game, to be those Ludens, to solve these puzzles he's set up before the game even comes out. So why have I been bringing up the Matrix this whole time? Well, Kojima seems to not only be trying to make his version of 1984, but remix it into the Matrix, as this seems to be his view of where the world is going. A world where society as we know it will no longer be a real society, but a digital society, where we're all plugged into a supercomputer that rules our lives. Not only has he built in many subtle cues to virtual reality in his series, but he's been on Twitter sharing things that are both constantly referencing virtual reality and directly referencing the Matrix. Check out this picture he posted of himself holding a landline, with it for some reason plugged in outside. Now check out this picture of Mads Mikkelsen holding a similar phone that a fan paired up the picture of Kojima with on Twitter, which Kojima then retweeted. Phones in the Matrix are vital to understanding how the system works, because if you know how they work, you know how to communicate and how to get out. Cell phones in most landlines are just used for communicating, but payphones are used to be able to exit the Matrix and re-enter your body. seems to me that Kojima is hinting at his connections. Yes, we've known Mads has been involved with this for some time, but this is a thematic thing to do. Aside from this, as I mentioned, Dr. Madnar might actually be the one who created the simulation, with Copplethorne stealing the source code and naming it after himself, just as Huey stole Granon's concept for Metal Gear. If this is the case, that would likely make him the architect of the simulation, as he was already rather old in Metal Gear 2, 1995. MGS4 was in 2014. He appeared to be at least 70 in 95, so he'd be in his 90s by MGS4. Unless he never aged because it's a simulation and he controls it all. There's more though. Check out this clip of Conan Without Borders, a new series Conan is doing where he goes around the world to appreciate different cultures and meet creators such as, you guessed it, Hideo Kojima. In this Q&A, he says a few things that are very strange and kind of suspicious.
Where's the Kojima video? That's going to be released later, but we did visit Kojima Studios. It was very cool. A lot of top secret stuff there.
Yeah, we have to be a little delicate with the timing of that.
Yes.
Because they were incredibly nice to us.
Yes.
And he's an incredibly cool guy.
Very cool.
Obviously brilliant.
Yeah.
And he did ask, could we release that closer to when possibly they're getting ready to do their thing, and we wanted to respect that.
Absolutely.
So
we can disclose they're creating the entire game in one laptop.
Yeah, it's a giant room with just one.
It's a giant room, one laptop, and oddly, a laptop from 1998.
Yeah,
That's surprising.
That's how they like to work.
Got a lot of stickers.
He joked that the game was being made on a single laptop from 1998, to which Kojima responded a day later with a tweet from him holding a laptop with Metal Gear Solid 1 running on it. Could this indeed be Kojima saying that Death Stranding is not only going to be in virtual reality, but be based in the Metal Gear lore? I think it's highly viable evidence myself, but I know I'm digging deep, so. There's also the line from the man in the golden mask, who I'm theorizing to be an unnamed Drebin wielding the spirit of Ocelot in a mask. We can always tweak the rules a little.
This is a sparring program, similar to the programmed reality of the Matrix.
It has the same basic rules like gravity. What you must learn is that these rules are no different than the rules of a computer system. Some of them can be bent. Others can be broken.
He is known for saying that he's an ocelot with the pride of a lion. Wouldn't you say that this chimera creature resembles a lion, especially with its roar? So with all this said, where do I stand? I think exactly what I said. That Kojima appears to be utilizing the subtle cues that he has laid before himself in order to strengthen the context of MGS2 in the modern age. With that said, I won't be disappointed if it's only in themes and design elements that Death Stranding is the continuation of his plans for Silent Hill, as it clearly is in the very least the spiritual successor to what PT was teasing with those paintings to nail that in.
You'll never be the same, Jack.
Where am I?
Where's that X-ray? Got it right here, Doctor. Get it up on the board, quickly. Initiate data recovery from the arm.
I'm on it.
Got a set of circuits in the arm. We're patching replacement memory units into your nervous system. You may become disoriented. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry.
Data stream is connected.
Getting me a clamp here. He's losing a lot of blood. Stay with me now. We're gonna talk to me.
Jack, you'll never be the same, Jack. He's a fighter. I like fighters. You hurt him. I'll kill you.
We'll survive.
Go about your business.
No! Don't!
After this, you'll never be the same, Jack.
You will follow orders, little soldier.
He's stable. Prepare the optical implant.
What happened to me? My eye. I can't see.
Optical nerve is completely destroyed.
Start the procedure.
Get his optical receptors ready, doctors.
Done.
Moving the eye now.
How does he look?
This eye's a mess.
Jack, keep your eyes on the screen.
Your watch.
See your new world, Jack.
Be strong. Watch.
Jack the Ripper.
Don't be angry, soldier.
Accessing nervous system control panel.
Who's there?
You can't come in here.
Come closer.
He's not ready.
Where is he?
The upgrade is complete.
Systems are online.
You gave them our position. You told them our military strength. You told them where we are. You told them information. No.
You will tell us, or we will kill your family.
Please, your wife. No. Your wife.
I will take my time.
No. Tell her to stop. Tell her to stop. You do not make your own decisions. You are mine.
Jack! Don't look away, boy. This is your future. It's a beauty, isn't it? There's honor in a blade, Jack. You see, anyone can pull a trigger. Point. Shoot. He's dead. But a blade. Pressing that cold metal against another man's throat. Feeling his pulse. It's personal. It's intimate. There's honor in killing with a blade. This is your future, Jack.
I owe you for that speech you wrote. It did wonders for my approval ratings. You understand what matters. Filters, information control, none of that matters anymore. People these days don't care about what's right or wrong. It's all about the spin. How well you can shift blame to the other guy. People these days see only what they want to see. Don't tell me you're still on about that grand jury nonsense. They've got nothing that connects me to Desperado. Besides, the average Joe doesn't give a shit either way. People these days think money is the solution to all their problems. We need to bring back the greatness of good old America. Reclaim the American dream. To do that, we need to make sacrifices. That's what those pansies in the so-called Tea Party don't seem to realize. This is a revolution, my friend. We are the true sons of liberty. Anyway, I gotta run. We'll talk soon.
That's it for this video. I'm going to make part 4 if December 6th and proves to be fruitful for information regarding Death Stranding. And with all the teasing that Jeff Keighley and Koji Pro have been doing, I'd say we're in for one wild fucking ride. Thank you to everybody who helped me with this. Cypher, Rue, Parkadoxer, Chef Umaril, Lolly Lulelo being a newer addition to the crew, and all of you for your outstanding ideas and your support of the series. It really does mean the world to me that so many of you appreciate what I'm doing. My goal is not only to potentially uncover the mystery behind Death Stranding, but also to shed light on serious world issues, such as censorship of public knowledge by artificial intelligence being on the rise, i.e. YouTube, Facebook, Google, etc., political corruption, nuclear war, and generally just shed light on these things in an interesting way to make these topics more known and more relatable. That was, after all, Kojima's goal with Metal Gear Solid, was to raise awareness of these issues. Depending on what we see on the 6th, I'll be continuing in part 4, where I go over even more elements of social media, dig deeper into the things I touched on in my side op, and cover things I missed in part 2 regarding Low Roar and Oat Studios. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing. I'm really close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, which will mean that I'll be eligible for advertisements in that way, but I potentially already am with the last 12 months of watch time. The channel will be shifting focus after this series is complete, but there will always be my secondary channel for more frequent content in the form of me just playing games with friends and my Steam controller series. I hope to see you there. If you'd like to support me in the meantime, consider becoming a patron for only $1 for behind-the-scenes access. If I get to my first goal of $500, I will start to create videos on a more regular basis, or perhaps purchasing a Humble Bundle using one of the links in the description. Anyway guys, this is Retro Hellspawn, signing out.
No way. No way. What is this garbage?